Some time ago, I attended a conference hosted by an organization whose primary focus is church planting. Most of the 300 or so attendees were church planters, domestic missionaries, pastors, or people otherwise engaged in full-time mission work. I had been invited as one of 3 plenary speakers. I was slated to speak to the whole gathering and to lead 2 seminar sessions. Writing books and speaking are not my primary gigs. What I write and talk about grows out of my day-to-day commitment to be present and participate in the sanctuary community as both member and pastor. Because our community holds at its center people who are poor, homeless, street-involved, addicted, mentally ill, and in one way or another rejected by society, it is a demanding, yet strangely fulfilling place to be. And consequently, I don't tend to hang around much when I have a speaking engagement. I do what I've been invited to do, then go home, where my real life is unfolding. On this occasion, though, I came early for the express purpose of listening to one of the other plenary speakers, whom I had never heard before. He's well known as a terrific communicator and Bible teacher. The teaching pastor of a large church, he was addressing this particular group for the first time, and he'd been asked, I think, to outline a basic theology of the gospel. The morning started, as such events usually do, with a welcome, announcements, and then some music. Later there would be a band, but perhaps in deference to the earliness of the hour, one talented young guy with a guitar led us through thoughtfully chosen worship songs. Scripture was read, the needs of some individuals and some challenging international situations were mentioned, and we prayed together about them. Then the speaker got up to do his thing. He came as advertised, intelligent, articulate, witty, engaging, all of that. He spoke, it was obvious, from a deep and thoughtful conviction. The audience enjoyed him immensely. The centerpiece of his theology of the gospel was this: Jesus came to abolish religion. If I'm not mistaken, he'd written a book about it, Jesus Good, Religion Bad. I looked around. Many heads were bobbing in assent, and there was much smiling and some occasional laughter. The speaker's audience was right there with him. I thought about who the audience members were, good people who had committed their lives to living out the gospel. And I thought about why they were there. They certainly weren't in it for the money. I reflected on what we had been doing through the course of the morning so far, catching up with one another over coffee and muffins in the foyer, gathering in a church auditorium, communally worshiping, reading scripture and praying, and listening to a gifted person exposit the gospel. And I wondered, what is it we think we're doing here? Isn't all this, religion? Wouldn't anybody else say this is religious activity? Simply saying that we're not religious doesn't make it so. Are we fooling ourselves? And I found myself asking, what do we mean by religion then? And what about it scares us so much? It seems to me that what critics of religion, believers and non-believers alike, generally mean by religion is all the bad, crazy, or self-important things people do in the name of God. Hypocrisy, materialism, exclusivity, judgmental attitudes, seeking or abusing power, along with the blind and dangerous arrogance that comes from believing that God is on our side. Those attitudes and actions are wrong-headed and even hateful. But is that all religion means? Didn't Jesus say that he came not to abolish the law, but to fulfill it? Wouldn't we have to admit that the law of Moses was religious? Didn't Jesus tell his disciples, if you love me, you will keep my commandments? Sure, that's relationship, but isn't it also religion, actually doing what our master asks? Much Christian activity really is contrary to what Jesus taught. Just picking at random, let's say, supporting wars and building big expensive edifices that serve nobody but once-a-week attendees while children in the same city go hungry. Based on the general divergence between what our master taught and what we often do, I would imagine that adherents of other religions routinely ignore the tenets of their faiths too. But not all religious activity is contrary to what Jesus taught. Religion does, for instance, feed the poor. At Sanctuary, the faith community in Toronto that is my home, about 25,000 meals each year are shared by a handful of people who are wealthy, relatively speaking, and a large group who are poor. Churches, missions, synagogues, mosques, and temples across our city do the same. And I know that such material care is similarly offered by faith-based groups